We learned just before the show that Gawker has actually filed for bankruptcy, so as not to have to pay the huge judgment that it has incurred against Gawker in favor of Hulk Hogan in the case that it turns out was bankrolled by Peter Thiel. So I think that's Gawker telling them to delete their account. Or maybe maybe this was the goal all along. If you listen to Thiel and him talking about why he bankrolled the case, is because he would like Gawker to delete its accounts. And when you file for bankruptcy, perhaps that's what you're doing. Joel, you noticed this and let us know that this had happened before the show. And as I told you, we haven't really gone into this case because, I mean, it's a legal dispute in the technology industry. A captain of the technology industry has disclosed that he's involved. But on the financial side, it certainly impacts how online journalism is carried out or will be carried out in the wake of this case. So these are all good reasons for us to talk about it on the show, but we just haven't done so yet. So Joel, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. I don't even know where to start. There's so much to talk about with this case. Let me talk about today's developments, though, because I must confess, I have, what I know about bankruptcy law, I could fit into a thimble. But from a procedural standpoint, does anyone on the panel understand what this means in the context of the appeal? So they're going to appeal the decision. They've now filed for bankruptcy. Should they succeed on the appeal, then what? They come out of bankruptcy? I don't understand how the filing for bankruptcy is consistent with their desire to appeal and presumably continue to conduct business. There's automatically going to be a stay now, presumably, of the appeal pending the bankruptcy. And I don't understand, unless they're abandoning the appeal. Is that what this means? I mean, admittedly, I think I saw this maybe 10 minutes before we hopped on the call, so I don't really know how this is playing out. But I find myself procedurally confused as to what this all means. Anybody?
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
We know technology.
Yeah.
You've mistaken me for a real lawyer, sir.
Ask me a copyright question.
All right. I actually have practiced and from time to time continue to practice appellate law, so I have to jump into this, I suppose. I don't know. Again, you kind of did stump me there. It seems to me like you should be able to proceed on both fronts. If bankruptcy is your only way out of paying the judgment, of course, there's no enforcement of the judgment until the appeal is over with. So it does seem a little premature. Again, we're going to have to, we just learned about this before the show and are going to have to look into that excellent procedural question a little bit more closely.
It is a super interesting question. I'm very curious who has the answer to it.
Right.
All right. And it's probably really simple. It's just none of us know it. All right.
I mean, I think ordinarily you wouldn't file for bankruptcy unless you were facing imminent payment of the judgment. But again, I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer either.
Right? Because I mean, what are the costs that are going to be incurred? There's only the cost of the appeal, as you said. There's no final judgment yet to be enforced. So I don't get it. But that's probably because I'm missing something.
There's nothing that says more drop the mic than filing bankruptcy, though, right?
It
definitely grinds things to a halt.
No, absolutely it does. I mean, that's that is one of the things that's in the thimble. All proceedings are stayed.
Proceedings are stayed is in the thimble.
The next CLE that comes up, that's the tagline.
Right.
What I am, and again, to the extent that you haven't already exhausted this, what I do find very interesting, and again, I guess in my mind, the lead article on this is the Slate article that came out and talked about what's his name, Salmon, Felix Salmon, I think at the Slate, wrote this Chicken Little, the Sky is Falling article a couple of weeks ago to talk about Peter Thiel's involvement in this and how this was the death of media. And as a result, this is a terrible, horrible thing. Obviously I'm that's my characterization and I'm giving it short shrift, but it just doesn't resonate with me. It really doesn't. I mean, in an era in which I am counseling clients on issues of litigation financing, what Peter Thiel has done here, I think, is entirely consistent with the business model of litigation. The fact that the subject of the litigation is the media makes absolutely no difference. I understand that there is a tradition amongst the First Amendment purists, of which, quite frankly, I like to think of myself as one, that the media resides in a special space. But I think that if we're now going to pick and choose, because this is implicit, I think, in the message, that not every litigation is amenable to third-party litigation financing, I think that's absurd. And I think it's, at a fundamental level, I think it's also inconsistent with the capitalist model. It's an investment, like any other investment, and Peter Thiel had an expectation of recovering on his investment. Now, that recovery may or may not be monetary in this case, but if even the objective was to and I'm not saying it was, but if it was to bankrupt Denton and his company, then that is his objective. And it's the fact that it may be perceived as a vendetta, I still think, based on the facts and certainly the jury's determination, inclined to agree with him that it's a legitimate end. I'm sorry, I misspoke. The jury didn't agree with him to the extent that his objective was to bankrupt the company. I'm saying as a factual matter, they agreed, with the arguments that Hulk Hogan's lawyers put forth.
Right. Anything you want to add to this from the privacy standpoint, Emery, since that's what is at the root of the case here? Is what Gawker did to Hogan and what other sites can do to other people?
I don't know. I'm really, really, really torn on here, obviously. I think it's a sticky issue that I know that I haven't really sorted out for myself yet. On the privacy angle, I mean, Hulk Hogan, I think, was a public figure. Like, I think that Hulk Hogan at the time, if I'm remembering the scandals at the time, Hulk Hogan publicly denied the racist allegations that Gawker leaked in the video. And feel free to correct me, chat, or angry emailers. Regardless, obviously, I don't support the, infringement into this man's privacy, but I also I'm rubbed the wrong way by the idea that, this billionaire came in with an agenda to bankrupt a news organization. Not a very good news organization. I mean, Gawker was a gossip rag. It always has been. But underneath the Gawker umbrella is also Gizmodo and Jezebel and Lifehacker and IO9 and Kotaku, which, for better or for worse, they all, I think, are, employing lots of journalists who are, trying to be journalists. And I like that goal. I don't think that anyone is saying, I guess some people certainly are saying that what Peter Thiel did should be illegal. I don't disagree with you, Joel, that it's, within the system. I think it's just sets a really bad template, when Gawker goes down, everyone cheers. But what happens if it's Ars Technica? What happens if, some billionaire has a grudge against Tech Dirt? And
right. I guess the silver lining to that is this is a trial court decision. We were talking about whether there will be an appeal that results in a published appellate opinion that either confirms what the trial court did or undoes it, or otherwise, adjusts it, as appellate courts can do. But what stands now is not precedential. It might have that kind of effect for people to say, well, if Hogan could do it,
right?
I can do it too.
I didn't mean legally precedential, but it definitely sets the template regardless.
Right.
You could.
Well, I think and I also think it's and you bring up a good point, Denise, which is that Gawker certainly has lost at the trial level before and succeeded on appeal, and I believe its official position on this is that this case will be no different. So from a legal perspective, I continue to have confidence in, although arguably I shouldn't, at least in my own jurisdiction, that courts of appeals will get this right.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly at a minimum, even if the verdict stands, they will the damages will be adjusted. I guess there will be a remitter to the $130 million that I think he was awarded.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Gawker Media. I guess it will be auctioned off.
Well, that was, and again, I haven't read this, but that's what apparently that's what the bankruptcy petition indicates, is that, they have listed their largest creditors, and Terry Bollea, aka Hulk Hogan, is their largest creditor. I don't know what their assets are. I mean, presumably they have ad revenue. That would no doubt be their largest asset. But I don't know. I don't know what the next move is.